Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show. My name is James, joined as ever by my good friend Steve. And this is Readers Digress. This is where we kind of go slightly off track. We pick a book, we read it, we discuss it, and it's also been adapted into a movie. So we talk about that and we compare the two. This episode, we are talking about Arkady and Boris Strugatsky's 1971 sci-fi novel Roadside Picnic, which was, of course, adapted by Andrei Tarkovsky into Stalker.
James, I'd never heard of this book before, but when you recommended it, I was really wanting to do something science fiction. I've been in a sci-fi mood lately. And so when you said the concept of the idea of aliens have already come and gone, and what's left over is almost as if travelers had stopped and had a picnic on the side of the road, left, and the wildlife is picking through the rubble to see what's left. And there's dangerous things and there's things of wonder. And so right from the get-go, this premise really intrigued me, and I was not disappointed. It's a fast read. It's not a big book, but I love the whole idea that there's these zones and there's a whole infrastructure of men. There's no women apparently that serve as guides, known as stalkers, who lead people into these zones in order to try to find what's been left by aliens that could be of value.
Yeah, I mean, I came to this book having seen the film a couple of times already, the Tarkovsky movie Stalker. And my biggest immediate takeaway was, oh, this is not really like the book very much at all. Certainly the approach to the plot. Whereas, because really the film just takes sort of one concept from the book and runs with that.
Yeah.
Uh, which is even more surprising when you think that the screenplay was written by the two brothers who wrote the novel. So
Right.
my initial takeaway from the novel was, oh, this is completely different. This is a far more sort of straightforward sort of mystery thriller set in the same universe as I was already sort of vaguely familiar with from the film. But it goes into so much more detail. I mean, the film is so sort of abstract in what has happened, and so sort of non-specific in what exactly has happened and why has it happened and what are the repercussions of that. Whereas the book is really kind of just lays it all out. It's like, yes,
Yeah.
there's been an alien visitation sometime before, and they have left. They left these sort of landing sites, and there is debris and detritus. What is it exactly? We don't know. Is it just
Yeah.
trash? Or are these, clues to evolutionary future, or are they just, broken bits of machinery? We don't know, and the characters never really find out. And that was
No.
one thing I really kind of enjoyed about it. There are these stalkers, and they go in and they take people in there into these zones, which are cordoned off otherwise, and they collect these scraps that have been left behind, bits of metal, bolts, nuts, things that we look like pieces of
Yeah.
broken machinery, and they bring them back and they sell them, but nobody involved has really any idea of what they're actually supposed to be used for.
Right. Right. And
It's
one of the suggestions by a scientist in the book is that these aliens are so far removed from us that we wouldn't even know what to do with it if it was explained to us. It's
right.
not like too intelligent. It's not like a 19th century man talking to a 21st century man. I mean, there would be a point, even though one is more evolved than the other, there'd be an understanding. They were suggesting this is like between a dog and a human.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I found all of that sort of really quite fascinating. And then at the center of all of that, and this is something that does become part of the film as well, even though it sort of manifests differently, is that there is this sort of rumored place in the center of the zone called the Golden Sphere. There's this object where if you go there, it will make your dreams come true, or it will grant you your a wish or something like that. And so the book sort of culminates with our main character, Red, sort of leading a group into the zone to get to the Golden Sphere and to get to the to sort of see how this is actually going to work out. And he has stories of a friend of his who did it before, and it worked out, but then he ended up killing himself, I think, the guy
Yeah.
who did it.
Yeah.
So they can't quite, they need to kind of sort of work it out for themselves as well. And that seems to be the part of the story that the film really runs with.
Yeah.
You've got a Stalker character, and he takes a writer and a scientist into the zone. But there, it's not a golden sphere; it's just a room.
Yeah.
There is a room,
Yeah.
and if you get to the room, then it will grant your wishes. And they have a number of sort of existential and philosophical crises along the way
Yeah.
before they even get there.
Yeah,
So
the book is philosophical and abstract, but the film is much more philosophical and abstract. It was at times I found the film beautiful to watch, and yet this is the Soviet Union. Everything looks broken. Everything looks, and even in the book, it's hard not to view what's happening and the philosophical discussions not happening through the lens of an oppressed, censored people that are longing for that human creativity and that flourishing to come, but it's hampered all around them. And you get that sense both in the book and in the film.
very much so. And you're absolutely right. The focus, I mean, Tarkovsky, the director of the film, seems far more interested in those big questions and in keeping them vague so that they can be allegorical, so that they can be applied to the Soviet model, the communist model. You can read the whole film as just, the Stalker is essentially, I don't know, Lenin or Stalin or whomever. He's the one that's like leading them into this wilderness. Go, you just have to trust me. You have to do what I say, follow my rules, however strange and weird they might seem to be. What the things that I'm doing along the way might look odd. They might make no sense to you, but you just have to trust me. You just have to have a little faith that this is the way. And when we get to the end, it'll be a paradise. It'll be a utopia. You'll get what you want.
Yeah.
And it's
but if you don't listen to what I say, if you go off the path, it's very dangerous and you could die, which is kind of what they were living under.
Absolutely. And the journey of the film is a sort of a loss of confidence in that leadership.
Yeah.
And almost a loss, or simultaneously a loss of being able to articulate and recognize what it is that you want anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you can look at it as the communist model. You could also look at it as a religious allegory. Organized religion falls apart in the same way, or can fall apart in the same way. If you test faith with too many questions, it kind of falls apart. There's so many unanswerables in there.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think for me the most impactful thing is that once they get to the end and the scientist reveals that he's brought a bomb along with him, and his plan is to destroy the room, and then he doesn't do that, and none of them end up going into the room. They're actually, you know what, I'd rather just I'm happier with what I know rather than risk it all for the unknown kind of thing. And I think I will just sort of retreat back to not dealing with this kind of very strange, potentially powerful and dangerous abstract concept.
Beyond this point, there be dragons.
Exactly that. Better the devil you know than the devil you don't, kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah. Whereas in the book, they actually engage it. And if I'm honest, the book's ending I found more palatable to me. If anything, the last page, the very ending of the book, you're mentioning how it can have a faith metaphor as well. I had a very religious faith-based interaction with that final encounter that Red has with the Golden Sphere, and it really encouraged me and gave me a lot of hope.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, because the ending of the film kind of almost comes out of nowhere. There hasn't really been, it's a theme that's in the book from the very beginning. The Red has a child. They have a daughter that they call the Monkey,
which is a little weird because she looks like a monkey, and you're thinking, is that the most appropriate name?
Right. And it's it's their child, but has undergone some kind of mutations because of his has a radioactive response to the going into the zone repeatedly, and it has sort of impacted her in undefinable ways. Whereas in the film, we are left with the revelation that she is kind of developing sort of mutant powers, essentially.
Yeah.
That
she's crippled. She's crippled, but she has
kind of
powers.
Telekinesis, telekinetic powers. And what is that going to spell for the future? Which I thought was a really sort of fascinating way of sort of twisting the same piece of information and representing it in a way that obviously works far better cinematically than on the page, but ultimately tells you the same thing.
Yeah. And the fact that it was 1970s Soviet Union, although neither the movie nor the book is set in the Soviet Union, obviously the where the writers were living is heavily influenced their writing. Everybody in this, both film and book, is smoking and drinking nonstop. This is a they are just chain smoking. Everybody's drinking all the time. When they sell their what do they call it, skag, or what do they call the materials, the items they get out of the zone? They call it not skag or not swap. They call it there's a term for it.
There is a term for it.
Yeah. Anyhow, when they sell it, what they want to use it for is to get to the bar and drink some more. And so I just found the 1970s sensibilities is not something we would probably see in a sci-fi novel today.
No. Well, the other thing that I thought was interesting about the film is, I mean, obviously the film was made in 1979, but I got definite sort of Chernobyl vibes from it as well.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And it's a weird kind of bit of sort of prescient foreshadowing to having this kind of sort of disaster area where if you go in repeatedly, it's going to be unhealthy for you. And there's even that sequence at the end where he's walking along the waterfront with his wife and carrying his daughter, and there's like this big sort of nuclear power station in the background. Yeah. It's almost like they know, and if this had come out like sort of 2 years after Chernobyl, I think that's all anybody would talk about regarding this movie.
Well, did you read in I did do a little Wikipedia research about the film, and apparently the director and a couple of the key people, I need to look it up again, died of the same cancer, and they all attribute it to an extended shoot in that site, in that abandoned area that they were in, was apparently had a toxic chemical plant very close by.
Oh, wow.
And they said during the filming, you could even see chemicals bubbling up in the water. So when they go through that water at one point, and I'd read that in Wikipedia, I thought, yeah, is that what they're trudging through? And the director eventually died of, I forget what form of cancer, but they had the same kind of cancer with different people who were part of that production.
Oh, wow. No, I hadn't heard about that at all. Oh, that's yeah, that's incredibly shocking. Speaking about the water that everyone's trudging through and bubbling up through, it's obviously slightly irrelevant and slightly facetious, but at the end when he gets home, and the first thing his wife does is he takes off his trousers and she just puts him straight into bed, and I'm like, right, gross. He's been like literally rolling around in the swamp for days on end, And at the beginning of the movie, he literally gets out of bed, puts his trousers on, and goes off. And I was like, oh, okay, sure. They living in a society with no showers, no running water, fine. But then when he gets back after all of that and just gets straight back into bed, I was kind of like, ew.
yeah.
It's missing the point slightly, but still, nevertheless, I found it was a bit kind of gross.
One of the things the book does well is it comes up with some really wild stuff that how the zone impacts society. It's not like there's these dangerous things in there. Like literally the dead randomly animate and want to go back to their home, their original homes. Or, I think it's the vulture who gets into the house lime and it dissolves your bones. And so when Red feels his legs, they're already feeling rubbery. Like there's nothing in there. And so it was these kind of descriptions, or when they're looking for Red, the police in the bar, and he uses a shrieker on them that he got in the zone that just explodes a noise out there. I thought there was elements within this that were extremely creative. Right. How they were saying that when people would emigrate out of the zone, wherever they would emigrate to, there would be an increased amount of accidents and disease, and it's nothing they could point to, but the statistics were showing that wherever people were emigrating to, the just deaths would go up, and it could be random accidents, but they couldn't figure out. So they got to the point in the book where they forbid people to emigrate. You have to stay there.
Yeah, I think that was one of the things that when I read the book, I was like, really? Seriously? There's all of this stuff in the book there are all of these kind of like ideas and all of these
Yeah.
stories and subplots and characters that they decided just to sort of completely ditch
Yeah.
for the movie. I was quite frustrated by that, because I mean the book almost feels very much, I got vibes of Philip K. Dick
Yeah.
from it. You know,
Yeah.
it's definitely that kind of sort of hard boiled, sort of noirish science fiction. You know,
Mhm.
where there's a real sort of sense of society and a community and a sort of criminal underbelly and you
Yeah.
know, and all of this kind of stuff going on, as well as these sort of mad otherworldly sort of inventions and concepts going on, and then yes, this layer of sort of philosophical ideas on top, but it's very much like a second layer. It doesn't
Right.
really it's
Agreed.
not invasive into the main sort of narrative. And having come to it sort of thinking that I knew what the story was going to be, because I've read the book, because I've seen the film more than once, um and actually approaching the book quite trepidatiously because of that, because I was like, oh, this is going to be really kind of abstract
Yeah.
and philosophical, and there's not going to be much plot, and then for it to be really straightforward in that regard. You
Yeah.
know, there's
Yeah.
really very clearly defined sort of story beats and characters and threats and all the rest of it, and being like, did you not want to put any more of this into the movie? I
Yeah.
mean, don't get me wrong, I love the movie, but the movie is a completely different thing, completely
Absolutely. Yeah.
detached,
It's like a
far
low
more than I
budget.
was expecting.
It's the movie's like a low budget Terrence Malick film, and that it's just this surreal. And when I say low budget, I don't mean it even in a derogatory manner. It's just
No,
basically the walking through rubble for 2.5 hours and having philosophical discussions. And some of the discussions are better than others. Some of them I got quite drawn into, but like I agree, the book is much tighter. And it's interesting, if you read it in the Kindle, the 4 vignettes or the 4 chapters of the book fall almost exactly at 25% mark. So it's literally 25%, 50,
nice,
75.
nice. I love it when when a book's structure is as obvious as that, and is, you know,
Yeah.
as pronounced, I should say, rather than
Yeah.
obvious, it's pronounced as
Yeah.
that. I mean,
Mm.
one thing that struck me about the film rewatching it this time is how much like a stage play it really is. You know, so much of it is just 3
Yeah.
characters, one, you know, and I really envisaged, I was like, you could do this as a stage play so easily. You
I
know,
hadn't thought of it, but as you say that, you're absolutely right.
just these 3 characters just wandering around place to place, having these long conversations. And so I think that's why it does kind of, it's reliant upon this kind of visual, atmospheric
Yeah.
sensibility, which is very much Tarkovsky's thing. You
Yeah.
know, because I came to this movie a bit later, but I'd seen Solaris, which is his other big sci-fi
Yeah.
movie,
Yeah.
before that. And even that one, which was made at the beginning of the 70s, was touted as a really difficult film to watch. You know, it was made as a direct response to 2001.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it was about humans interacting with an alien species that they don't understand.
Yeah.
You know, and whereas in other films, you know, they'd had these sort of eye-opening, you know, sort of mind-expanding experiences coming into contact with alien life, like in 2001. The idea of Solaris is they go to the other end of space, meet these aliens, and they don't get it. And you
Yeah.
get some of
Yeah.
that in Stalker as well. It's like
Absolutely.
and I think that's probably what appealed to Tarkovsky about it. It's like they don't get it. You know, and this
Yeah.
came out, and that came out like 2 years after Close Encounters of the Third Kind, as well as
Mhm.
other movies. But that's the one that it reminded me of. I mean, it's a totally different movie, but again,
Yeah.
it's about a sort of fairly benevolent visitation,
Yeah.
and about humans attempting to interact with a species that they, you know, essentially have nothing in common with.
Mhm.
But it's not a standoff.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's an attempt at interaction of ideas, but there they get a lot more out of it by
Mhm.
using music. Whereas here it's like they've arrived too late, they're getting nothing out of it,
Yeah.
and in the end they just have to kind of retreat back into their own sort of grounded human problems and just sort of make do ultimately.
Well, I think, and I'm gonna just say that I prefer the book over the film
Mm,
because I've mentioned it to me in past videos or past reviews that we've done that I'm a sucker for redemption stories. In the last couple pages of the book, there's definite redemption for Red. Not that he's a bad guy throughout it, but you get a lot of his internal monologue. He contemplates bad things. He contemplates using people for his own ends, but he loves his wife. He loves his daughter. he is a conflicted, complex man, as we all are. And when he finally reaches the sphere, and he had all these kind of selfish ideas, he begins to have this internal self-awareness of his own, all the things that are wrong in his life that make him just a average guy that wants the world to be a better place. And when he, instead of invoking what he thought he was going to do as his wish, instead he wishes that they would find something in him that's good and use it, that every happiness, I forget the words, but it's like happiness should be everywhere, and no one, I love the line, no one should be forgotten.
Right.
And so I got to the end of this book and I thought, I love this book. I love that ending. I love the redemption of Red. And yeah, I'm as much as I enjoyed the film, I would have loved to see this film on the big screen. I was watching it on my laptop, and I really feel I was not getting the full experience.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely fair enough. I have seen it on the big screen. I think I've seen it 3 times now. I saw it on DVD, and then I saw it at the Hong Kong International Film Festival probably about 8 years ago. There was a big restoration of it. And I was like, oh, this is a good opportunity. I know I've seen it before, and it is a hard watch. It's a challenging watch. Yeah. But I also am always of the mind of, well, then that's when you need to definitely see a film on the big screen, when you have no distractions, when you have to just sit there and really get into it. And I thought, I really need to see it again anyway. And so I was glad I did that. And yeah, it's such a kind of visual, oral, immersive experience. Mm-hmm. It's so much about the mood of it. I like how the kind of the tint of the photography changes. So it's got this kind of murky sepia tone in the real world, if you like. But then when they go into the zone, everything is beautiful and lush. There's blues and greens. Yes, you know, which you'd almost expect it to be the other way around. And I kind of I like that subversion of our expectations. I always like it when things don't go the way I plan. I was just reading up on the film this time, and they were shooting for almost a year. So they basically had probably almost finished the movie when they discovered that the film stock they were using was unusable. Yeah. And then the cinematographer could no longer work with them. So they had to not only go back and shoot essentially the whole movie again, but with a different DP as well.
Could you imagine that? I would
just give up.
And I think he almost did. He nearly shelved it and just said, forget it. You could see the exasperation that kind of situation would cause, but fortunately he plowed through.
Yeah, he did. I mean, because it seems to be one of those movies that's so deliberate. Mm-hmm. You know, it's not a movie that was kind of improvised or ad-libbed, but every shot is so sort of carefully framed. You know, he uses a lot of long takes, very stealthful pans, was it tracking in and tracking out. The dialogue is so very specific. You know, it feels like long meandering conversations, but only because it has been so carefully written.
And great use of water. Water was utilized so well in this. The sound of water, rushing water running in a stream,
just trickling streams.
Yeah, sometimes it would just be the background soundtrack to the philosophical discussions that are going on.
Yeah, actually, whenever I think of Stalker, whenever someone mentions it and it comes into my mind, that's what comes into my mind. Is the sound of kind of trickling stream water is the first thing in my head. And I'm just like, oh yeah, wow. You know, so in terms of which do I prefer? I mean, I was so familiar with the film coming in that it really took me aback how different the book is. And so it's really difficult even to compare the two. You know, I really love the book. You know, I really love, that kind of sort of science fiction story. And I was relieved at how straightforward it is in its storytelling and how clearly defined it is and all the rest of it. And part of me really just wishes that there'd be a movie of that, because that's a hell of a great story. And that's not the story of the film whatsoever. Almost to the point where I'm like, well, there's no point comparing them because they're so different.
Right.
But they do tap into the same idea. I don't want to choose, frankly, because I really love them both. But I think for very different.
You don't have to. I'm not gonna.
Okay. What I will say is that Roadside Picnic, the novel, is absolutely worth reading for sci-fi fans of all ages and and persuasions, and it's very accessible as well. It's a really easy, like you say, it's a really fast, light, easy read, but a very engaging read and very thought-provoking read. If you've never seen Stalker, absolutely make the effort to see Stalker, but it's very challenging.
Don't you think now that you've read the book that a reboot of the film could be done that's a little more faithful to the book? It'd be an interesting book. I would love to see a new movie based on the book that was a little more faithful.
Okay, yes, the second half of what you just said. I mean, when you said to do a reboot of the movie, no, absolutely not. What I would like to see is another adaptation of the book that is a far more
that's what I meant with reboot. I probably didn't choose my words correctly there.
And you could do it as a movie, you could do it as a miniseries. The one I keep meaning, we're going off on a tangent ever so slightly, but the one I keep meaning to go and watch is the series of The Man in the High Castle, but based on the Philip K. Dick book.
Yeah,
which I haven't done, but the book is great.
See, I've watched the series and I love the series.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
maybe that's something that we could discuss.
We could do that. Another tangent is, although I've already read it, is the book Logan's Run is the film adaptation is much different than the book. And I've waited for 35 years for them, and they're always talking about it. There's always a new producer that's going to run with it, and of doing a new movie that's much more faithful to the book.
Interesting. I mean, another one like that is I Am Legend.
Yes,
is another. They've made at least 3 adaptations.
Omega Man, Charlton
Omega
Heston.
Man, Last Man on Earth with Vincent Price, and I Am Legend with Will Smith.
Yeah.
None of which are the book.
Yeah,
and the book is so good. Oh, and yeah, so we could go on and on and on, and with any luck, we will and do more of these. Suffice to say that I'm so glad I've read the book now.
Yeah,
I think I put it off just because I felt that it was going to be something very different to what it turned out to be, and what it turned out to be is exactly the kind of sci-fi novel that I consume voraciously, and so I'm kicking myself that it took me so long to do so. But I still love the movie, and it gave me an excuse to watch the movie again. And I'm so glad that you watched the movie and that you liked it as well.
Absolutely, I enjoyed it. I got people coming in. What I'm going to say now is our next book is Ian McEwan's Atonement. If you'd like to read it with us, it's our next book of choice. I think we're trying to do this once a month.
Yeah, we're trying to do
dogs barking now.
Yeah, we're trying to do one a month, and for the time being, at least, we're picking books that have been adapted into films, just so that we can, keep this slightly tethered to our main channel, but also, just so that we can have some kind of film-related conversation at the same time. So yeah, Ian McEwan's Atonement. I think we've both seen the film, but haven't read the book at this point. So if you want to join us in doing that, that would be absolutely great. Let us know in the comments if you are interested in doing so, and we're going to give ourselves about a month, not least because I'm going on holiday, and so sometime about mid-November we will drop that video.
Thanks for joining us. Till next episode.
See you in the library. I'm sticking with that.
You're wonderful to see. You ought to be in pictures. Oh, what a hit you would be. Your voice